I still vividly remember that moment when everything seemed to pause, as if holding its breath, awaiting the eruption of something unexpected. Right in the midst of a familiar setting, a place I thought held nothing worth worrying about, subtle, elusive signs began to emerge, like quiet warnings of something deeply significant. My heart pounded relentlessly, and my instincts whispered that a delicate balance was on the verge of collapse. It's hard to put into words, but I knew, without a doubt, I was about to face the greatest challenge of my life. Little did I know, those hesitant steps at the beginning would lead me to a mystery capable of overturning everything I thought I understood. Late on a Saturday afternoon in early autumn, gentle sunlight poured over the parking lot outside a large shopping mall on the outskirts of the city. Inside the mall, the atmosphere was lively, filled with cheerful chatter and the sound of footsteps echoing along the marble floor. Soft pop music played from various stores, blending with the sweet aroma of freshly baked waffles and coffee wafting from the food court. In the heart of the central foyer stood a grand marble fountain. Colorful lights shimmered around its dancing water jets, filling the air with a cooling mist. Overhead, a vast glass dome welcomed the glowing twilight sky, creating a space both modern and inviting. Among the crowds of shoppers, people of different ages and ethnicities, Grace strolled leisurely along the brightly lit corridors, occasionally stopping to glance at shop displays. At over 60 years old, she no longer moved with the urgency of youth. A small, well-worn brown leather handbag rested on her shoulder, carrying her wallet and a few personal items. In her hand, she held a short list of items she planned to buy, handwritten in neat, rounded letters that revealed her age. Not long before, Grace had briefly stopped by a scarf boutique on the lower level. She admired some silk scarves with autumn leaf patterns, warm hues that she imagined would go nicely in the brisk, cool days ahead. Yet, after a moment of consideration, she gently placed the scarves back on the shelf, deciding to see what else was available before making up her mind. As she left the boutique empty-handed, she felt an uneasy sensation, as if someone was watching her. She glanced around, but only saw other shoppers engrossed in their own errands. Telling herself not to be oversensitive, she continued on to the jewelry store she had scribbled on her shopping list. Pausing at the jewelry display window, Grace admired the sparkling pieces under the bright lights. It made her smile, recalling memories of her younger days. She remembered how she had once longed for a pair of pearl earrings for her wedding, but back then her finances had been tight. She and her husband Robert had exchanged simple silver wedding bands. She recalled him, a bit awkward yet endearing, fumbling as he slid the ring onto her finger, a small, modest token of love that meant the world. Even now, she still wore that worn silver ring, each scratch symbolizing a beautiful memory of their shared journey. At her age, Grace was no longer especially drawn to jewelry for herself. Her thoughts were of her son, Michael, who was turning 40 next week and had recently earned a promotion at the city police department, an achievement that filled her with pride. Memories came flooding back of the hardships mother and son had endured after Robert's passing more than a decade ago. Grace had raised Michael alone, taking on the roles of both mother and father, and seeing him grow into a successful adult was more than enough to confirm the worth of her sacrifices. Now, in celebration of his upcoming birthday and well-deserved promotion, she wanted to buy him a truly special gift. Grace stood for a while in front of a display case showcasing a men's watch. Classic in design, with a circular face and blue hour markers against a white dial, it exuded both strength and sophistication, qualities that reminded her of her son. She imagined how Michael's eyes would light up when he opened this gift. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside the jewelry store. A small chime attached to the door announced her arrival. A young sales associate greeted her with a bright, professional smile. Grace politely returned the greeting, and after a quick exchange, the associate guided her over to the display showcasing the watch she had in mind. "This watch is lovely," Grace said softly but clearly. "Could you show it to me?" With a courteous nod, the sales associate carefully removed the watch from the display and placed it on a velvet pad before her. Grace picked up the watch, feeling its cool metal weight. The smooth, reflective glass mirrored her gentle face beneath thin reading glasses. She pictured Michael's reaction to this gift. A flash of surprise, an affectionate smile, followed by an embrace. The mere thought filled her with warmth. "It's for my son?" she explained, still admiring the watch. He's just been promoted, and his birthday is coming up. Congratulations to both of you, the associate replied, sounding genuinely pleased and impressed by Grace's story. The warmth in the associate's voice further stirred Grace's pride. She asked about features and warranty details, then decided to purchase the watch right away. While the clerk swiftly wrapped the watch, Grace thought of an extra flourish to make it even more special: an engraving. Fortunately, the store offered immediate engraving services. After a brief pause, Grace gently requested, "Could you please engrave, to Michael, my pride and joy, love Mom on the back?" She chose these simple English words, certain that her son would understand every nuance of her love and pride from that short message. 15 minutes later, the watch was ready, featuring a delicate inscription on its back. The clerk placed it in a small velvet box, carefully wrapped it in dark blue paper with a graceful silver bow, and handed it to Grace. Holding the parcel, Grace felt a flutter of excitement. She paid with her credit card, thanked the sales associate, and headed for the exit. Before leaving, Grace opened her wallet to verify the receipt. It showed the watch purchase, along with its warranty. She slipped both safely into a compartment, satisfied that everything was in order. The slight tension in her heart was replaced by a warm contentment. She glanced at her own watch. Nearly 5 p.m. Michael had agreed to meet her at 5:30 by the fountain in the central atrium, giving her enough time to grab a warm cup of tea at the Starbucks at the end of the hallway before meeting him. She imagined how she would hide the gift box behind her back to surprise him. Letting out a soft, happy sigh, she continued down the corridor. Not long after Grace left the scarf boutique, however, her earlier intuition proved correct. From behind a decorative stone column, Jack Morgan, a longtime mall security officer, had been discreetly observing her every move. At 45, with over 20 years in the business, he tended to see the world through suspicious eyes, having witnessed countless shoplifting scams. The moment he saw an older woman exit the scarf store empty-handed, his suspicion flared. What if she slipped something into her bag? He wondered, trailing Grace at a distance. Just then, his radio crackled to life with a report from the scarf store. One silk scarf was missing, and the staff suspected the last customer to leave. Jack's heart thumped with excitement. His suspicion was correct. No hesitation, he radioed for backup from Tom, a nearby security colleague. Suspect is a female heading north corridor toward the main entrance. Possible shoplifting. Need assistance, he said into the device before hastening after Grace. In moments, Tom arrived to join Jack, who quickly informed him about the missing scarf and the suspect they were following. Tom seemed a bit taken aback to learn that the suspect was an elderly woman, but Jack's insistence left no room for doubt. They proceeded along the shiny tiled floor, hurrying after Grace, who was steadily making her way toward the coffee shop at the far end. In Jack's eyes, the matter was all but settled. She must have the scarf hidden in her purse. It was time for him to catch her red-handed. At that moment, Grace was busy picturing a cozy seat at the Starbucks, sipping hot tea while awaiting her son, so she hardly noticed heavy footsteps closing in from behind. Suddenly, she heard a curt, commanding voice. "Ma'am, please stop right there." She whirled around to see 2 uniformed mall security guards, Jack Morgan and Tom, as identified by the name tags on their uniforms, approaching. Jack was tall, broad-shouldered, around his mid-40s, with a cold, sharp gaze. Tom, younger, around 30, wore a somewhat uncertain look as he tagged along. Both of them advanced, positions set to block her path, a chilly breeze from a nearby exit sending a shiver down Grace's spine. "Is there a problem?" she asked, feeling a pang of unease as she clutched the shopping bag holding her wrapped gift. Her heart thumped. "We received a report that you left a scarf shop without paying for an item," Jack said bluntly, his voice carrying an accusatory edge. "We need you to allow us to check your purse and belongings." For a split second, Grace just stood there in shock. She blinked in disbelief. "I'm sorry, what? You suspect me of stealing? I didn't take anything." The idea that she, a woman with nothing to hide, could be labeled a thief felt deeply mortifying. Confusion and indignation bubbled up inside her. Tom seemed slightly torn when he saw Grace's shocked expression. He explained in a calmer tone, "Ma'am, the store reported that a scarf went missing shortly after you left. This could be a misunderstanding, but please let us inspect your belongings. If you haven't taken anything, we'll apologize and release you right away." This somewhat gentler voice steadied Grace a bit. Taking a breath, she tried to stay calm. "Very well. Check whatever you like. I haven't stolen anything. I only bought a watch for my son at the jewelry store. She raised the paper shopping bag that held her newly purchased gift. Here's the gift. I have the receipt, too. Grace reached into her wallet, fingers trembling slightly, to fetch the receipt. Jack, however, quickly lost patience. He stepped forward, speaking gruffly. Let me see. Without waiting for permission, he reached into the open section of her wallet, snatching out the thin slip of paper. The abruptness of his action startled Grace. Never in her life had she been so disrespected. Glancing at the receipt, Jack confirmed it was indeed for a high-value watch. Narrowing his eyes, he looked Grace up and down as though re-evaluating her. She felt the searing heat of unjust suspicion bearing down on her, leaving her feeling stripped of dignity. This only proves you bought something in the jewelry store, Jack continued coldly. But what about that missing scarf? Did you hide it somewhere else? I told you, I didn't take any scarf. Grace's voice cracked with frustration and fear. She opened her handbag with trembling hands, showing them each compartment. Inside lay just her wallet, some tissues, her keys, a small bottle of hand sanitizer, and her old cell phone. No sign of any scarf. See, I've got nothing. Please just check the store's cameras or recheck their inventory. I'm sure this is a mistake. Tom, peering into the handbag, turned to Jack. I don't see anything. This might really be a misunderstanding. Jack was still unconvinced. If anything, Grace's cooperative manner only spurred him to press harder. He tilted his head, looking her over. You went into the jewelry store just to create a distraction, didn't you? Who knows what kind of tricks you might be pulling? His insinuation made Grace's cheeks burn with indignation. From the doorway of the jewelry shop, the sales associate who had sold Grace the watch stepped out to watch, concerned about her elderly customer. She approached. Is something wrong? She was just in here buying a watch. Jack cut her off with a dismissive wave. This doesn't concern you. Go back inside. His authoritarian tone intimidated the young woman, who glanced apologetically at Grace before stepping back. That abrasive dismissal caused Grace's shame and desperation to mount. Evidently, he wanted no witnesses. She felt alone, humiliated, and water brimming in her eyes as onlookers gathered to watch. Some passers-by paused, whispering to one another, while a couple of them held up their phones to record the scene. Yet no one stepped forward to intervene. In accordance with our procedures, ma'am, we need you to come with us to the security room. Jack's voice had the finality of an order. Without waiting for Grace's response, he and Tom stepped on either side of her, arms at the ready to escort her away. I'm not going anywhere, she exclaimed, recoiling with panic. I haven't done anything wrong. You have no right to drag me off like a criminal. Her voice trembled, yet she managed to stand her ground. She looked around, silently hoping someone, anyone, would intervene. Growing impatient, Jack's face hardened. We have every right if we suspect shoplifting. Resisting us won't help you. You'd better cooperate. With that, he seized her frail arm. She gasped at the painful, vice-like grip on her sensitive joint. Tom reached for her other arm, appearing a bit hesitant, but under Jack's firm gaze, he complied. Feeling trapped between two large men, Grace's heart pounded like a drum, her head spinning. Fear and humiliation closed in on her. Her paper bag slipped from her fingers. The gift box tumbled out, the silver ribbon unraveling on the floor. From the slightly opened lid, she could glimpse the watch's velvet case. She panicked, frightened that her precious gift would be damaged. Stop struggling, Jack barked, mistaking her alarm for resistance. He tightened his grip, causing Grace to cry out in pain. In that instant, a flood of memories broke over Grace, an old trauma from decades earlier. She pictured another face scowling with that same hateful glare, a police officer in the mid-1970s. It was 1975 and 20-something Grace had stepped into a small convenience store with a few college friends. They only wanted to buy some late-night snacks, but the cashier accused them of using counterfeit money. Things escalated when the store owner called the police. The responding officer hadn't even listened to their explanations. He barked at them to submit to a search. Outraged, Grace had protested that she was innocent and ended up handcuffed face down on the hood of the police car. In the swirling red and blue glare of the squad car's lights, she heard her friends crying, the clink of handcuffs, and her own heart pounding in anger and humiliation. The store owner eventually found it was all a misunderstanding. An old, worn $10 bill mistaken for a fake. The officer had released them without a single apology, leaving Grace to weep throughout the drive back to her dorm. She had believed times were changing, that such prejudice would remain in the distant past. Yet now, nearly 5 decades later, at almost 70, it was happening again. That same sense of utter disgrace and helplessness. Tears welled in Grace's eyes. "I beg you, I haven't done anything," she sobbed, her voice breaking. Her knees threatened to give out under her. Tom glanced at her in alarm. "Jack, she's not well. Maybe we should—" Jack cut him off. "She'll be fine. Let's get her to the security office." With that, they continued dragging Grace toward a service elevator at the end of the corridor, ignoring the worried glances of onlookers. Some pulled out phones to record. Others looked away, uncertain and uncomfortable. For a moment, Grace thought no one would save her from this nightmare. That was when she caught sight of a tall figure striding rapidly from the far side of the hallway, a man whose silhouette she recognized instantly. In a heartbeat, Michael rushed forward, his voice booming, "Stop! Let go of her!" Jack and Tom spun around in surprise, halting. Grace raised her tear-filled eyes in disbelief. "Michael!" In seconds, Michael reached them. His gaze fell on his mother's slender arm pinned in Jack's harsh grip. Rage flared in his chest like a burning fuse. Every instinct told him to punch the man who dared treat his mother so roughly, but training and self-control as an officer kept him measured. He spoke through clenched teeth. "Release my mother. Now." Caught off guard, Jack barked back. "Who are you? Step away or you'll be in trouble." Michael moved swiftly, drawing a leather ID wallet from inside his jacket. He flashed his gleaming police badge and ID card. "I'm a cop. More than that. Who do you think you're manhandling right now?" "That's my mother." Stunned, Tom dropped Grace's arm and stepped back at once. Jack also loosened his hold, turning to face Michael. The harsh indignation they had shown earlier wavered at the sight of the badge and Michael's furious expression. Both realized that the bystander who intervened was a senior-level police officer, well within his rights to call them out. Grace wobbled a bit, weak from the ordeal. Michael swiftly moved in to support her. He gently helped her lean against the wall, anger glowing in his eyes as he faced the guards. "What in the world is going on here?" he demanded. "Why are you roughing up a senior citizen like this?" Jack swallowed hard. "Officer, we suspected her of shoplifting. We're just doing our job." Michael shot back. "So you suspect my mother, of all people, of shoplifting? On what grounds?" Tom, more subdued, stepped in to clarify. "She was the last customer to leave the shop that lost a scarf, so we came to check. We wanted to take her to the security office to clarify the situation." Michael glanced at his mother, who was still trembling. "Mom, is any of this true?" "No, Michael," she murmured. "I didn't take anything. I showed them my bag, my receipt. I tried to tell them I'm innocent." Her voice quivered with emotion. Michael squeezed his mother's hand reassuringly, then glared at the guards again. "Did she let you check her purse?" Tom nodded. "Yes, we found nothing. It seems it really was a mistake." "Then why?" Michael asked, voice rising. "Did you keep dragging her around like a criminal after you found no evidence? She's nearly 70, and you had her pinned by both arms. Are you out of your minds?" Jack muttered. We were going to take her to the office so the police could investigate." Michael's jaw tightened. "You mean you wanted more cops to show up? I'm right here, an officer, and I can see clearly you've had no cause to treat her that way. This is unacceptable." Just then, a man in a suit arrived breathlessly, a mall security manager. Surveying the tense situation, he exclaimed, "What's going on here?" Michael fixed him with a stern gaze. "I'm Michael Williams, a senior detective in this district. The elderly woman your men were manhandling is my mother." The manager's face went pale. "Detective Williams, I'm so sorry. There must be some misunderstanding." He turned to Jack and Tom, flustered. "What in the world did you two do?" Jack faltered. We're just carrying out policy." "Carrying out policy?" the manager snapped. "And this is what we get? If the lady's innocent, you should have apologized immediately and let her go." Under the weight of onlookers' eyes and the manager's fury, Jack and Tom both hung their heads. Tom mumbled a genuine-sounding apology to Grace. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Truly." Jack also muttered, "I'm sorry," though he avoided eye contact. Grace was too shaken to speak, just nodding weakly as she tried to steady her breathing. Michael picked up the fallen gift box. Its ribbon had come undone, and the box lid was slightly askew. He opened it, revealing a small black velvet case inside. His heart lurched at the sight. remembering how proud his mother had been to buy him a present. He slowly lifted the velvet box's lid. There lay a fine wristwatch. Turning it over, he saw the tiny engraved words, "To Michael, my pride and joy, love, Mom." The short inscription cut straight to his core. "Mom, you got me this." His voice trembled slightly as he glanced at Grace. She stood off to one side, still shaken, supported by the young sales associate from earlier. She managed to whisper, It was supposed to be a surprise for you. I was so afraid it was damaged." Michael swallowed hard, forcing a shaky smile as he examined the watch. "It's all right, Mom. It's safe." Turning back, he fixed Jack and Tom with a steely glare. "Do you realize what you've done? You treated an innocent elderly woman like a criminal, yanked her around in public, and ruined the moment she meant to surprise her son with a heartfelt gift. Where's your sense of decency and respect?" Tom hung his head. "I'm sorry," he murmured. Jack's face twitched with guilt and fear. The bystanders who had witnessed everything stood quietly, but their disapproval was palpable. Some had been filming. They held onto that footage in case it might be needed as evidence. A flurry of footsteps approached as the security manager tried to calm onlookers. "All right, folks, nothing more to see here. This misunderstanding will be handled properly." He asked one of the mall employees to escort curious bystanders away. Then he bowed apologetically to Grace. "Ma'am, on behalf of the mall, I deeply apologize. We'll pay any medical fees if you need a checkup. We'll file a formal report on this incident for our senior management. Jack here will be suspended for further investigation, likely dismissal, and Tom will be retrained on professional conduct. This is unacceptable." Michael's jaw clenched. "I hope so. I'll also be reporting this to my precinct. While this might be an internal mall issue, your officer's behavior may constitute assault on an elderly person and unlawful detention. My mother's physically hurt, and more than that, this ordeal has traumatized her." Pale and sweating, the manager nodded. Yes, absolutely. We recognize our responsibility. We just hope she can find it in her heart to forgive us. We'll make sure such an incident never happens again." Grace took a moment to steady herself. She gave a weary nod. "I accept your apology, but please make sure your staff is better trained. No one else should have to experience this." "Thank you, ma'am," the manager said with relief, stepping back to let Michael and Grace have some privacy. The sales associate stood nearby, offering Grace a bottle of water and a small first aid kit. "Ma'am, let me check your arm," she suggested softly. Grace smiled weakly. "Thank you, dear. I think I'm all right." Even so, a faint bruise was visible where Jack's fingers had grabbed her arm. Seeing the bruise, Michael's anger flared again. Still, he reminded himself to stay calm as he turned to the manager. "Right. We'll leave it at this for now, but I expect full cooperation if my mother decides to press charges." "Of course," the manager answered, nodding repeatedly. With that, Michael gently helped his mother to her feet. She was still a little shaky. He picked up the watch gift box, tucking it into her handbag. The paper bag was torn, so he carried the gift himself. "Let's get you home, Mom," he said softly. "Yes," Grace nodded. "I just want to leave this place." Supporting her with a protective arm, Michael steered her toward the exit. As they walked away, a concerned murmur followed them. Some people still hovered, discussing the incident in hushed, indignant tones. Others had resumed shopping, the lively mall atmosphere seemingly undisturbed. But for Grace, it felt like she was escaping a dark cloud that had momentarily blotted out all sense of peace. Outside, the evening sky had begun to dim, flecked with gold by the last traces of daylight. Michael opened the passenger door of his car for her. Before she settled in, he retrieved a bouquet of bright yellow chrysanthemums and a box of apple pie from the back seat. Placing them gently on her lap, he said quietly, "For you, Mom. Just a little surprise. Congratulations to the most wonderful mother in the world." Tears pooled in Grace's eyes as she gazed at the flowers and the pie. She reached for Michael's hand. "Oh, Michael, you're so thoughtful. I'm the lucky one to have a son like you." Michael slipped into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. He glanced at her. "Mom, I'm so sorry I didn't get here sooner. I can't imagine how scared you must have been." She shook her head. "It's not your fault, son. I just never thought something like this could happen at my age. I'd hoped the world had changed." Hearing the trembling in her voice, Michael felt a sharp pang of sorrow. I'm ashamed some folks in this line of work misuse their authority, but I promise I'll see this through. They'll be held responsible for what they did to you. Grace gently clasped his hand, her voice soft. Don't let anger blind you, my son. I know you want to see justice done, but always stay true to your kindness and principles. I want them to learn their lesson, yet I also believe in offering a chance for people to change. I don't want anyone else hurt like I was. Michael nodded thoughtfully. You're right, Mom. We can show mercy and still ensure accountability. But rest assured, I'll do my part to keep them from doing this to anyone else. Grace answered with a faint smile, tears glistening in her eyes. Your sense of justice and compassion defines you. I'm proud you've grown into such a man. They drove quietly for a moment. Overcoming her initial shock, Grace spoke again, more calmly. Let's go home, freshen up, and have dinner. I don't want to cancel our plans. I'll be fine. Michael nodded. All right, but if you feel dizzy or anything, tell me. We can visit a doctor to be safe. They left the mall behind, merging into the early evening traffic. Inside the car, they kept talking about the bright side of the ordeal, about the thoughtful sales associate who had tried to defend Grace, about the passers-by ready to provide video evidence if needed, and about Tom's eventual apology. Though there were people like Jack in the world, there were also many good-hearted individuals like Michael, Tom, who showed some remorse, and the helpful clerk. That gave Grace a sense of comfort. Cruelty existed, but so did compassion. On Michael's wrist glinted a new watch. He had asked for permission to wear it right away after leaving the mall, letting its weight and message of love remind him of how precious family and justice were. There was a small scratch along the edge, collateral damage from the struggle. For Michael, this minor imperfection only made the gift more meaningful. It was tangible proof of a challenge that he and his mother had faced and overcome together. It would forever remind him that love and justice must be protected at all costs. That evening, the two shared a quiet dinner at home, savoring roast chicken and apple pie. Beneath the warm glow of the kitchen light, Grace recounted an old memory, her painful experience decades before, when she had been mistaken for a criminal by a prejudiced officer. Michael listened intently, occasionally holding his mother's hand as her voice faltered with lingering hurt. By the end of the evening, they found solace in the knowledge that, despite the world's darkness, good still shines when people stand up for what's right. It was clear to them both that prejudice hadn't vanished, but it could be confronted. Grace realized she wasn't alone. She had a loving son ready to defend her and the truth. When they finished dinner, Michael gently hugged his mother. Take care tonight, Mom. I love you, he said softly. Grace closed her eyes, resting her head on his shoulder. I love you too, my son. Drive safely. He drove off, the car's taillights fading into the night. Grace lingered in the doorway, holding the bouquet of chrysanthemums, gazing up at the starry sky. She imagined her late husband Robert smiling down upon them proudly. Back inside, she locked the door, ready for a peaceful sleep, grateful that, in spite of everything, she had regained her dignity and learned that love, at its core, is stronger than any adversity. A week later, Grace found herself seated in the front row of a large auditorium at the city police department. She looked on with shining eyes as Michael stood proudly on stage, wearing his crisp, formal dress uniform with newly acquired insignia. Today was his official promotion ceremony, honoring his service. Grace placed a hand over her heart, filled with both pride and relief. She recalled how Michael had once been just a boy she'd had to guide and protect. Now, his leadership skills and compassion were recognized by an entire city. Standing beneath the department's crest, he accepted a certificate from the police chief, who shook his hand enthusiastically. When it was Michael's turn to speak, he adjusted the microphone and searched the audience for his mother. Finding her eyes, he smiled. First, I'd like to thank my family, and especially my mother, who taught me the importance of caring for others and standing up for justice from a very young age. Applause broke out across the hall. Grace felt her cheeks flush with emotion, but her eyes sparkled with joy. Michael continued, My mother, who's been through many hardships, constantly reminds me that every person, no matter their background, deserves respect. Her lessons helped shape my career in law enforcement. Just last week, they guided me to prevent a serious wrongdoing. Grace knew exactly what he was referring to, but kept quiet, her heart warm with gratitude. Michael took a deeper breath, gaze firm. As police officers, we hold power and responsibility to protect the innocent, but we must never forget that behind every face lies a human being, deserving of dignity. My mother taught me that lesson every day, and I pledge to carry it forward. I dedicate this achievement to her, the unsung hero in my life. Once again, cheers and applause filled the auditorium. Grace dabbed at her tearful eyes, a broad smile lighting her face. A few minutes later, the police chief approached and warmly shook Grace's hand. Photographers snapped pictures, Michael in his impressive uniform, and Grace at his side in her best dress, glowing with pride. In that photo, Michael stands tall, proud in official regalia, while Grace leans gently against his arm, smiling with quiet dignity. Behind them, the national flag and the department's emblem gleam in the spotlight. In that shining moment, Grace couldn't help but think of her late husband. "See, Robert, our son has become a true guardian of justice," she thought, imagining his pleased grin looking down on them. They had endured so many trials, yet good had triumphed in the end. Beyond the auditorium's windows, a bright afternoon sun lit the sky, signifying hopeful new beginnings. To Grace, it was a promise that whenever love and goodness join forces, justice will prevail. Her and Michael's experiences, from injustice in a shopping mall to triumph on the grand stage, prove that with determination and compassion, light can outshine any darkness. There might still be a long road ahead, but Grace believed that, thanks to people like Michael and countless others who refused to remain silent, each step would bring the world closer to understanding and fairness. And so, in the end, the light of justice dispelled the shadows of misunderstanding, allowing family, courage, and honesty to triumph. This story reminds us that even a single moment of indifference can push an innocent person into injustice, but just one right action can spark powerful change. If you too believe in the value of what is right, don't forget to subscribe and share this message to help spread its humanity. Many more meaningful stories are waiting for you to discover. Thank you for watching.